Cold wind cuts across the palace walls of Chang'an. A boy sits on the throne. Not a warrior. Not a conqueror. Just a child, wearing the crown of the most powerful empire on earth. Outside the palace gates, generals whisper. Ministers scheme. Entire armies wait for orders that may never come. Because this empire is fragile. And everyone knows it. Imagine standing there, in the marble halls of the Han Dynasty. Incense smoke curls into the air. Silk robes brush against stone floors. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, tens of millions of people live under a single ruler. A ruler who might not survive the year. But here's the question. How did China reach this moment? Just years earlier, the land had been soaked in war. Cities burned. Farmers became soldiers. Brothers killed brothers while warlords carved the country apart like hungry wolves fighting over meat. Then one man rose from nothing. Not a prince. Not a noble. A peasant. His name was Liu Bang. And somehow, he would build one of the greatest empires the world had ever seen. An empire that would dominate East Asia for 4 centuries. An empire so powerful that even today, millions of people still call themselves Han. But the story of the Han Dynasty is not just about glory. It is about betrayal, ambition, power so vast it could lift a civilization, or tear it apart. And tonight, you're stepping inside it. After the fall of the powerful Qin dynasty, China was left in chaos. The Qin rulers had unified the country for the first time, but their harsh laws, heavy taxes, and forced labor made them deeply unpopular. Only a few years after the death of the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, rebellions erupted across the land. Farmers, soldiers, and former nobles all rose against Qin authority. Among the many leaders who emerged during this period of unrest was a man named Liu Bang. Unlike many powerful figures of his time, Liu Bang did not come from a noble or royal family. He had once worked as a small village official responsible for maintaining order. But he was known for his charisma, intelligence, and ability to attract loyal followers. As the Qin government collapsed, China plunged into a brutal struggle for power known as the Chu-Han contention. Numerous warlords fought to control the territory of the former empire. The most powerful of these leaders was Xiong Yu, a brilliant but ruthless military commander who controlled vast armies and territory. At first, Liu Bang served under Xiong Yu and benefited from his victories against the Qin forces. But tensions soon grew between the two men. Xiong Yu believed in ruling through strength and intimidation, while Liu Bang gained support by treating people with fairness and respect. Many scholars, soldiers, and local leaders began to see Liu Bang as the more reasonable and stable leader. When the Qin dynasty finally collapsed in 206 BCE, the fragile alliance between the warlords quickly shattered. China once again descended into war as rival factions fought for control. The conflict between Liu Bang and Xiong Yu became the central struggle of the era. For several years, both sides battled across the Chinese heartland. Xiong Yu often won major battles thanks to his superior military experience and powerful army. But Liu Bang possessed something equally important: patience and strategy. He listened carefully to the advice of talented advisors and generals, including the brilliant strategist Zhang Liang and the skilled commander Han Xin. Rather than relying only on direct confrontation, Liu Bang used diplomacy, alliances, and careful planning to weaken his rival. Slowly, Xiong Yu's allies abandoned him, while Liu Bang's coalition grew stronger. Territory that once supported Xiong Yu began shifting its loyalty. The final confrontation came in 202 BCE at the famous Battle of Gaixia. Liu Bang's forces surrounded Xiong Yu's army and cut off all escape routes. Legend says that during the night, Liu Bang's soldiers sang songs from Xiong Yu's homeland, making his troops believe their homeland had already been conquered. Hearing these songs, many soldiers lost hope and deserted. Realizing defeat was inevitable, Xiong Yu fought his way out with a small group of followers but was eventually surrounded again. Rather than surrender, he chose to take his own life. With his rival gone, Liu Bang finally secured control over China. Later that same year, Liu Bang declared himself emperor and founded the Han Dynasty. He became known as Emperor Gaozu of Han, the first ruler of a dynasty that would shape Chinese civilization for centuries. Unlike the Qin rulers who governed through extreme punishment and strict laws, Emperor Gaozu attempted to create a more balanced government. He reduced harsh legal penalties, lowered taxes, and allowed local communities more freedom. These policies helped restore stability after years of war and rebellion. At the same time, the new emperor maintained many useful systems created by the Qin dynasty. The centralized bureaucracy, standardized writing system, and road networks continued to function under Han rule. By combining Qin administrative efficiency with more moderate leadership, the Han government became both strong and widely accepted by the population. The capital of the new empire was established at Chang'an, which would grow into one of the largest and most important cities in the ancient world. From this center of power, the Han rulers began rebuilding China's economy, agriculture, and trade networks. But challenges remained. Powerful nomadic groups to the north threatened China's borders, and internal political rivalries still simmered within the court. The young dynasty needed strong leadership to survive these pressures. In the decades that followed, the Han Dynasty would not only survive but flourish. Under future emperors, China would expand its borders, strengthen its economy, and establish trade routes that connected East Asia with distant civilizations. After the early stability created by Emperor Gaozu of Han, the Han Dynasty continued to strengthen its control over China. Over time, the empire grew more organized, its economy improved, and its population expanded. But the greatest transformation came under one of the most powerful rulers in Chinese history, Emperor Wu of Han. When Emperor Wu came to the throne in 141 BCE, he was determined to expand the empire's power and influence. At the time, one of the greatest threats to Han China came from the Xiongnu Confederation, a powerful group of nomadic warriors who controlled the vast northern steppes. For decades, the Xiongnu had raided Chinese border regions and forced earlier emperors to pay tribute. Emperor Wu decided to change this policy completely. Instead of appeasing the Xiongnu, he launched massive military campaigns against them. Han armies pushed deep into the northern territories, building forts and expanding China's defensive lines. Generals such as Wei Qing and Huo Qubing led successful expeditions that weakened Xiongnu power and secured China's borders. These victories opened new opportunities for trade and exploration. One of the most important missions of this era was led by the explorer Zhang Qian, who traveled west to establish diplomatic and commercial contacts with distant civilizations. His journey helped open what would later become known as the Silk Road, a vast network of trade routes connecting China with Central Asia, the Middle East, and even parts of Europe. Through these routes, merchants carried silk, porcelain, jade, and other valuable goods across thousands of kilometers. In return, China received horses, glassware, spices, and new cultural ideas from distant lands. The Silk Road transformed the Han Dynasty into the center of one of the most important trade networks in the ancient world. Meanwhile, the Han government continued strengthening its internal administration. Confucian philosophy, based on the teachings of Confucius, became the foundation of government education and ethics. Officials were expected to rule with wisdom, discipline, and moral responsibility. The government also developed a large and efficient bureaucracy to manage the empire. Scholars trained in Confucian classics began serving as administrators, judges, and advisors. This system allowed the Han rulers to govern a massive population spread across vast territories. Agriculture also flourished during this period. New farming techniques, improved irrigation systems, and government support helped increase food production. As a result, China's population grew dramatically, and cities expanded across the empire. The capital city of Chang'an became one of the largest cities in the ancient world. It was a center of government, culture, trade, and learning. Scholars, merchants, and diplomats from distant regions traveled there, bringing knowledge and goods from across Asia. However, despite this prosperity, challenges slowly began to appear. Military campaigns had been expensive, and powerful families were gaining influence within the government. Corruption and political rivalries began to grow inside the imperial court. These problems would gradually weaken the stability that earlier Han rulers had built. Over time, internal conflicts, economic strain, and rising rebellions would begin to threaten the once powerful dynasty. Despite its long period of prosperity, the Han Dynasty eventually began to weaken. Like many great empires in history, its greatest threats came not only from outside enemies but also from internal problems that slowly undermined its stability. One of the first major issues was the growing power of wealthy landowners. Over time, large landowners accumulated enormous estates, while many small farmers lost their land due to debt and heavy taxes. These farmers were often forced to become laborers or tenants working on the lands of powerful families. As inequality increased, resentment spread throughout the countryside. At the same time, corruption began to spread within the government. Court officials, palace eunuchs, and powerful aristocratic families competed for influence over the emperor. These rivalries weakened the central authority of the imperial government and made it difficult to maintain effective leadership. During the later years of the Han Dynasty, many emperors were young or politically inexperienced. As a result, powerful court factions began controlling decisions behind the scenes. The struggle for power between government officials and palace eunuchs created constant political instability within the capital. These internal conflicts weakened the empire's ability to respond to growing unrest among the population. In 184 CE, one of the largest rebellions in Chinese history erupted, the Yellow Turban Rebellion. The rebellion was led by a religious movement that promised a new era of peace and equality. Thousands of farmers, frustrated by poverty, corruption, and natural disasters, joined the uprising. Although the Han government eventually suppressed the rebellion, the damage had already been done. Large areas of the empire were devastated, and the central government had lost much of its authority. To defeat the rebels, the court had relied heavily on regional military commanders, granting them significant power over their territories. These generals soon became warlords, each controlling their own armies and provinces. As imperial authority weakened, rival warlords began competing for dominance across China. The once unified empire slowly fractured into separate regions controlled by powerful military leaders. The Han Emperor remained on the throne, but real power was slipping away. One of the most influential warlords of this period was Cao Cao, a brilliant military commander who gained control over northern China. Although he claimed to serve the Han Emperor, he effectively ruled the region as his own domain. Finally, in 220 CE, the last Han ruler, Emperor Xian of Han, was forced to abdicate the throne. This officially marked the end of the Han Dynasty after more than 4 centuries of rule. Following its collapse, China entered a turbulent era known as the Three Kingdoms period, when rival states battled for control of the former empire. Despite its fall, the Han Dynasty left an enormous legacy. It established systems of government, culture, and trade that shaped Chinese civilization for centuries. Confucian principles became deeply rooted in Chinese political and social life, and the administrative structures developed during the Han period influenced later dynasties. The Silk Road continued to connect China with distant parts of the world, spreading goods, ideas, and culture across continents. So influential was the Han Dynasty that even today, the majority ethnic group in China still refers to itself as the Han people, a name that reflects the enduring impact of this powerful and transformative empire. The rise, prosperity, and eventual fall of the Han Dynasty remains one of the most important chapters in world history, a story of ambition, innovation, unity, and the challenges that every great empire must eventually face.